Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us recite salawat in the holy name of Nur Maulana Shah Kareem ul-Husaini Hazar Imam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mu'mineen, since 11th of July 2007, Ismaili history is recording the golden jubilee of our 49th Imam, Nur Maulana Shah Kareem ul-Husaini Hazar Imam, Salawatullahi alayhi. This golden jubilee has brought many blessings for the worldwide Ismaili Jamaat. Amongst these blessings is the good news that Maula Khudawand is going to bless as many Jamaats as possible with his Zahiri Nurani Deedar. In the context of this, today, let us talk about the significance of Deedar in Momin's life. The word Deedar is a Persian or a Farsi word from the root word Didan, which means to see or to behold. Ordinarily, it simply means to see or to behold. But when Deedar is used in the context of the Ismaili Tariqa, it conveys the meaning of the beatific vision, which means to behold the Nurani face, the Nurani personality of the Imam of the time in a physical Zahiri context. And this Deedar, beatific vision, is full of barakah for the Momins. The Holy Quran uses two words for Deedar. It uses the word ru'ya, which comes from the root word ra'a, which means to see, and another word in the Quran is liqa, which comes from the root word laqiya, which means to meet or to encounter. And from this word liqa is the word mulaqat. The Holy Quran tells us very clearly that God's Deedar is a fundamental principle of Islam. For instance, in Surah 10, Ayat 7, it is said, "Verily, those who do not hope to have liqa, that is Deedar, of God, and are content with the life of this world and are happy with it, and who are neglectful of our signs, their abode is in the fire because of what they earn." In the same Surah 10, Ayat 11, towards the end of the Ayat, God says, "We leave those who do not hope to meet us to wander blindly perplexed in their disobedience or transgression." In another two Quranic ayats, in Surah 18, Ayat 105, God says, "They are those who disbelieve in the signs of their Lord and in the meeting, mulaqat, with Him. Therefore, vain will be their deeds, nor shall we on the day of judgment assign any weight to them. And finally, in Surah 29, Ayah 23, God says, those who have disbelieved in the signs of Allah and in meeting with Him shall despair of my mercy, and it is they who shall suffer a painful chastisement. These few Quranic ayats clearly show us that God's Deedar or God's Liqa is a fundamental principle of the Quran and Islam, and it contains all divine bounties and favors. Because whoever hopes for and gets this Deedar receives the ultimate blessing, which is that he or she merges in God and attains eternal, everlasting life. Contrary to this, whoever doubts or rejects the liqa or Deedar of God is in the fire, and their good deeds become null and void. They despair of God's mercy, and they wander around in perplexity. This introduction shows that in Islam, according to the Quran, the Deedar of God is very, very significant for mu'mins. At this point, we have to ask, how is it possible for us to have this Deedar of God here and now while we lead this physical life? The answer is very simple, and the answer is completely in the light of Quranic teachings. We learn in the Quran that God's mercy, that is His salawat, His rahmat, and His hidayat, guidance, everything comes through His appointed or chosen Khalifa or vicegerent. And another name which is in the Quran for such a Khalifa or vicegerent is Wasila, which in English means an intermediary. In other words, the Khalifa or the intermediary of God between Him and humankind is either the prophet of the time in the cycle of prophecy or the imam of the time in the cycle of imamat. We see in the Quran that obedience of God is only possible through His messenger, Rasul, and through His Ulil Amr. Every day, 3 times a day, we recite in our holy dua, Ati'ullaha wa ati'ur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. This is Surah 4, Ayat 59. And here it is quite clear that when mu'mins obey the Ulul Amr, that is the Imam of the time, they are automatically obeying the Rasul, the Holy Prophet, and in this way they are obeying Allah. Another Quranic reference is in Surah 9, Ayat 111, in which God says that He has purchased the lives, the souls, and the property and wealth of mu'mins, so that in return he can give them paradise. And this is done through the Prophet or the Imam in their respective times. In the same way then, the Deedar of God is also through his Khalifa or Vicegerent, who is the Prophet in the time of prophethood, or the Imam from the direct descendants of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and this is in the cycle of Imamat. We have seen many examples from the Holy Quran. Let us take a couple of examples from the traditions or the ahadith of the Holy Prophet. There is a very well-known hadith of the Prophet in which he has said, "Man ra'ani faqad ra'al haq." Here is the word ra'a in this hadith, which I introduced at the very beginning of this particular verse. It means, he who saw me indeed saw God. So the Holy Prophet equates seeing him with seeing God. In another hadith, the Holy Prophet says, "Blessed is the one who saw me, and blessed is the one who saw the one who has seen me. And blessed is the one who saw the one who saw the one who had seen me." This particular hadith is from the Al-Majalis Al-Mu'ayyadiyya, which is the series of lectures written by our great Fatimid Hujjat Sayyidina Al-Mu'ayyad Fiddin Shirazi. Then there is a third hadith in which the Holy Prophet refers to Hazrat Ali, and he says, "An-nazar ila wajhi Ali ibadah." To look at Ali's face is ibadat. To summarize this particular verse about the significance of Deedar in the life of mu'mins, we can say that Deedar is highly significant in our physical lives, because that Deedar is the forerunner of the Deedar when we leave this world physically. The Deedar is the highlight of a mu'min's life. The Deedar is what throughout history mu'mins have yearned for, longed for, prayed for, implored for, beseeched for, done giryawzari for. And we have many examples from our devotional literature, from our ginans and qasidas, where we see how peers and sayyids have articulated that longing for Deedar in their ginans and qasidas. So a Deedar, a Zahiri Nurani Deedar, is something which mu'mins have always prayed for. And when a Jamaat receives the great good news that a Zahiri Nurani Deedar is to take place in their country, then there can be no greater happiness than that for such mu'mins. In our next verse, inshallah, we shall look at how we should prepare for such a Deedar. In the meantime, let us humbly pray in the holy huzur purnur of Nur Maulana Shah Kareemul Hussaini Hazar Imam. Mola Khudawand, give Jamaats everywhere a deeper and a batini, esoteric understanding of the significance of your Zahiri Nurani Deedar, Mawla Khudawand accept the supplications of all Mu'mins everywhere to receive your Nurani Zahiri Deedar. Mawla Khudawand accept this prayer and respond to this prayer as soon as you possibly can, Mawla, and fulfill the longing and the yearning of our hearts for your Zahiri Nurani Deedar. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us recite salawat in the holy name of Nur Maulana Shah Kareem al-Husseini Hazar Imam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Today's topic is preparation for Deedar. In the first verse, we looked at how significant Deedar is for Mu'mins everywhere. We learned in the light of the teachings of the Holy Quran that the Deedar of God, the liqa of God, is a fundamental principle of Islam, and that this Deedar in the physical world is in the Deedar of either the Prophet in his time or the Imams in their respective times. However, just as the Deedar is a very significant aspect of the life of the faithful Mu'mins, in the same way, it is a very, very difficult mission. We have all heard, particularly in our South Indian tradition of Ginans, that our peers describe Deedar as dohelio, meaning it is a very, very difficult thing to do. And therefore, Mu'mins have to prepare themselves thoroughly in order to get the maximum benefit from such a Deedar. In this preparation, there are two things which are very important. And these two things are Iman and Amal. Just as the Quran says, Allazina amanu wa amilus salihat, which means those who believe and do good deeds. The word believe or belief, the noun, stands for Iman or faith or certainty. And it is very important that we do Deedar in the illumination of Iman. We all know, inshallah, that Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah Salawatullahi alayhi has written for the whole world to know in his memoirs that we believe that there are two realms of knowledge. That there is material intelligence, which we acquire by going to colleges, schools, universities. And then there is the spiritual enlightenment, which is something which is given, and it is given through total obedience and submission to the Imam of the time. This spiritual enlightenment is what we would also call ilmul yaqeen, or the knowledge of certainty. And the source of this ilmul yaqeen, or the knowledge of certainty, is the Imam of the time in every time. There is a very important hadith of the Holy Prophet in which he says, Ta'allamu min alimi ahli bayti, aw mimman ta'allama min alimi ahli bayti tanju minan nar. the translation of that is, learn from the alim, that is the learned of my Ahl al-Bayt, that is the Imams. Or learn from the one who has learned from the alim of my Ahl al-Bayt and get rid of the fire of ignorance. This hadith tells us quite clearly that the wisdom of this saying of the Prophet is that enlightened knowledge is only from the Imam or from the Imam's Hujjat, Peers and Dais. We have all read the preamble of the Constitution and we have seen that it is said in there that the Imam's ta'lim lights the murid's path to spiritual enlightenment and vision. So spiritual enlightenment and vision or Deedar are also quoted here together, and it is said quite clearly that it is the Imam's knowledge or the knowledge which the Imam has given to his Dais, Peers and Hujjats that makes it possible for Mu'mins to receive this spiritual enlightenment. It is therefore very important that while we are getting ready for the Zahiri Nurani Deedar of the Imam of the time, that we should make a point of acquiring some ilmul yaqeen or the knowledge or certainty. And for this, let us make a commitment every day to read a farman, to read a ginan with a meaning, or to read some of the books of our dais, such as The True Meaning of Religion by Pir Shahabuddin Shah, or Pir Pandyate Jawan Mardi of Maulana Mustansir Billah II, or some of the speeches of Maulana Hazar Imam, or indeed the chapter 8 of the memoirs of Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah. This is all knowledge of certainty. And this knowledge of certainty will make our iman strong, it will purify our iman, our belief, and then we will be able to be present in that Deedar, inshallah, and be able to get the maximum benefit from it. The second aspect of our preparation is amal, or good deeds, because iman or belief go hand in hand with good deeds. So these good deeds too are according to the guidance of the Imam, because what is good, what is valid, what is not good, what is not valid is also based on the Imam's guidance. It is the Imam's guidance which is our benchmark for everything in a Mu'min's life. So in terms of what type of activities we should undertake apart from making our knowledge of certainty stronger, our iman more firm, we should also carry out many of the farmans of the Imam of the time. For instance, the Imam has made innumerable farmans about the fact that we should remember the light of Allah at any time, all the time. In the Ismaili esoteric teachings, we are encouraged to be da'imuz zikr, which means that we should be remembering the light of God all the time. In a very important farman, Maulana Hazar Imam has actually said that in the West, people have said that there is a pressure on their time, that their lives are very stressed, they do not have the time to pray. Maulana Hazar Imam said, it is not a question of time, it is a question of all the time. Just as in our ginans we have uthta, bethta, rah chalanta, naam sahib ji ka lijiye, or where Imam Begum says, har dam zikr karna, hak se sabit hona. these type of ginans are encouraging us to follow the farmans of our present Imam, who on many occasions has told us that we should remember Ya Allah, Ya Muhammad, Ya Ali, or the names of any of our Imams, or the name of the present Imam. And while we were preparing for the Zahiri Didar, this is fundamental for us that we use every moment. Har dam zikr karna means in every breath. In fact, in one Ginan, Pir says that any breath which is devoid of the remembrance of the light of God is a dead moment, meaning there is no life in that moment. Secondly, this remembrance, this zikr, these tasbihs, and taking the names of the light of God should be accompanied by Giryauzari. Now, Giryauzari is something which we do every day when we have Giryauzari tasbih, when we stand up in the Jamaat Khana and supplicate in the presence of Mawla. The word Giryauzari is a compound Persian word, and it comes from two different words, Giristan and Zaridan. Giristan means to weep, and Zaridan means to consider oneself very weak, feeble, humble, and to efface oneself completely. And Giryauzari means to remember Mawla with abundant tears. To, in other words, remember the light of Mawla in such a way that one's heart melts. One is very aware of one's shortcomings. One is extremely aware of all the nafarmani, the disobediences of the past, and one totally and completely regrets our past behavior and actions and attitudes, and we wish to purify ourselves completely, so we completely efface our physical self, dissolve ourselves into tears, and in that way cleanse ourselves. As you know, Pir Sadruddin has a very beautiful verse in which he says, Kapda dhove so kya hua, dil dhove so pave. He says, what is the use only of washing your outwardly clothes and attire? The moments who really cleanse their hearts, they are the ones who are rewarded. There is a very touching story which is also mentioned by Dr. Shafiq Virani in his book, The Ismailis in the Middle Ages. And this story is from Pir Pandyate Jahan Mardi of Maulana Mustansir Billah Salwatullahi Alayhi II, in which he tells the story of Hazrat Yahya. And it goes like this, I quote, O believers, listen to the story of Prophet Yahya. He shed tears day and night, never relenting. One day, the angel Gabriel descended from the presence of the majestic Lord, saying, O Prophet Yahya, the Lord of the two worlds has asked, why do you weep so much? I feel immense pity for you. If you weep for paradise, it is granted to you. If you sob from fear of hell, I forbid it to touch you. The Prophet Yahya replied, I weep neither desiring paradise nor fearing hell, but to behold you, to receive your beatific vision, Deedar. At that moment, the Lord said, if you weep to behold me, then weep much, that you may attain your purpose. May you remain safe in this mortal world, and weep much. We can tell from this very touching story that God Himself regards weeping and supplicating or Giryauzari as a very important prerequisite for Deedar, for the beatific vision. Another thing which we can all do, and which we inshallah will have the opportunity to do, is that we will do a lot of seva or voluntary work, because when the Imam blesses a Jamaat with physical Zahiri Nurani Didar, then there are many, many moments that need to be looked after, and there is a lot of work to be achieved. And therefore, all of us will give a lot of seva. And this seva is not only in terms of physical work. Oftentimes, it is in the sense of support, advice, counseling, guiding people in the right direction, guiding them to the right literature, guiding them to the right way of thinking and attitudes. And finally, as I said, that we should read the farmans of the Imam every day, and we should practice all the ethics such as forgiving, not hurting people, not holding resentment or bitterness or having jealousy against anybody. We have to follow all these ethics of generosity and tolerance and patience, and continue praying. And with all that, inshallah, we will cleanse our souls to such an extent that when we are in the physical presence of the Imam of the time, then his light will shine and reflect in the mirrors of our hearts. The mirrors of our hearts will have been cleansed of all the dust and the rust which has accumulated over the years, and we will be completely cleansed by our own preparations. And then finally in the Didar, when Mola will forgive us and will answer our prayers for forgiveness and for spiritual elevation, and at that time his light will be reflected in our souls, and we will have both a Zahiri and a Batini Nurani Didar, inshallah. Let us pray. Ya Mawla, Ya Nur Maulana Shah Kareem, Al-Husaini Hazar Imam, Khudawan, as we eagerly and earnestly and unbearably wait for your Zahiri Nurani Didar, Mawla, inspire the Jamaat everywhere to prepare themselves thoroughly through their Iman and through their Amal, through their knowledge and understanding and conviction, and through their good actions such as zikr, giryavzari, voluntary work, and their reading and getting the true knowledge of Imamat from the books of Dais, Peers and Imams. Mawla Khudawan, bless us all with the inspiration and the good health and the energy to prepare ourselves so thoroughly that on that great day your nur can be reflected in our pure hearts. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Let us recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us recite salawat in the holy name of Nur Maulana Shah Kareem al-Husaini Hazar Imam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In this third verse, having looked at the significance of Didar in a moment's life, how to prepare oneself for that significant Didar, let us now anticipate the actual glorious day of the Didar and discuss how moments should behave in the presence of the Imam during the Darbar and the Didar. The best way to discuss this topic is to look at a very famous story of our great Fatimid Hujjat, Sayyidina al-Mu'ayyad Fiddin Shirazi. Sayyidina al-Mu'ayyad Fiddin Shirazi was so enlightened and he was such a great hujjat that Imam Mustansir Billah had himself written a poem about this great hujjat, saying that, "O my hujjah, you have reached that peak of knowledge which very few can attain." So this gives us an indication of his elevated position in the Ismaili Da'wah. He has written 800 lectures, which are known as majalis, and he has written a complete divan of poetry. And in his poems, he says about his great desire to see the Imam of his time. I quote, "I nurture a hope in my heart to journey to you. It is a hope I've had since I was a child." It is said that he was over 50 years of age when that longing from his childhood was finally fulfilled and he was blessed with an audience. In his autobiography, he has left a moving account of this experience. He writes, "I had barely set eyes on him," that is the Imam, "when awe overwhelmed me and reverence overcame me. I felt as though I was standing in the presence of the messenger of God and the commander of the faithful themselves, looking upon their very faces. When I fell to the earth, prostrate before the master of prostration, the one worthy of the submission of all, I tried to speak, to make my tongue intercede with him in the fairest manner by its speech. However, I found myself tongue-tied with awe and incapable of eloquence. When I lifted my head from prostration and gathered myself together, one of those present signaled me to rise. But the commander of the faithful, may God perpetuate his kingdom, rebuffed him with a frown. So I neither raised my head at this signal, nor gave it a second thought. I remained in the Imam's presence for an hour. I tried to speak, but my tongue could not move to speech, nor utter a single word. Whenever those present urged me to speak, I became all the more dumbstruck, all the more helpless in stammering. And he, may God perpetuate his kingdom, repeated, "Leave him be, let his awe subside, and his wonderment be dispelled." Finally, I rose. I took his noble hand and kissed it, placed it upon my eyes and my breast, bade farewell, and left filled with joy. What an incredible experience that a hujjat of his stature for 1 hour remained in prostration and without any speech in front of the Imam, because he was so overwhelmed by the Imam's nuraniyat, by the Imam's luminosity, by the fact that the Imam in his physical presence encompasses the nur of the Holy Prophet and all the Imams from Maulana Ali right through to the present. That is what a Deedar should be like for all Mu'mins. But, as we know, this is a very, very difficult thing to achieve, and it needs a lot of preparation, and it needs the sort of knowledge that Sayyidina al-Mu'ayyad Fiddin Shirazi possessed. But nevertheless, we can all try our very best, because on the day when the Imam does bless the Jamaat with Deedar, then there will be thousands of murids. There will be a lot of activity and excitement and hustle and bustle, and there will be quite a lot of pressure, and there may well be stress. And we have to transcend all these other emotions and all these other feelings, and we have to voluntarily, we have to willingly and deliberately create an environment of spiritual calm and peace, so that we can totally focus on the Nurani presence of the Imam. And that is not easy, because the Imam is present there in his physical attire. He is present there as a person, a human being. This is why Pir Sadruddin in one Ginan tells us, Ek fikar munivar amane che tamari, manas roope sahib jano. He tells us that there is one thing which worries him and causes him anxiety, which is that we, the Mu'mins, will think of the Imam as a human being. He is definitely in a body, but his essence is divine. He is the Nur of Allah. He is the Nur of the Prophet and all the Imams. He is the embodiment of that Nurun ala Nur that the Quran speaks about in the ayat of Nur, which we have been reciting on every important occasion throughout this golden jubilee year. But the Imam's physical presence does cause people to lose their focus. I would like to summarize a story here, which Dr. Shafiq Virani narrates in his book, The Ismailis in the Middle Ages, and he talks about a certain Khwaja Abdul Masoom who went to deliver the religious dues of the Ismailis of Badakhshan to the Imam Zul Fiqar Ali, and the Khwaja was granted an audience and received the beatific vision or Deedar of the Imam. When he returned to Badakhshan, men and women, young and old, they all gathered around him excitedly and said, "He has returned from the holy family of the Prophet." And taking him aside, they pleaded, "Please tell us, what did you behold in that assembly?" He had just begun to try to articulate what he had experienced, because what he had experienced was so sublime that it was not easy to put it into words, when somebody interrupted him, and he asked, "Is the Imam old? Is he a youth? Tell us. Perhaps he is a baby in his cradle. Has he a wife and children at home?" The poor Khwaja was completely distracted by such a question, because he had not expected the Ismailis in Badakhshan to ask him such physical questions. He wanted to describe the essence of the Imam. And so he, in his poem, continues by saying, "All the foolish men and women there were abassal, saying, 'Oh' and 'Ah.' What do such people, material by nature, know of the essence of the Imam? There was a man in that assembly, a sage. When he heard this babbling, he reproached them, saying, 'O worthless nightingale, practice not your idolatry with the unique, the sublime.'" So the Imam's physical presence can be a problem for Mu'mins if they have not thoroughly prepared themselves. For instance, this is what the Quran says in Surah 7, ayat 198. Addressing the Prophet, God says, "And if you invite them to guidance, they do not hear. And you see them looking at you while they do not see." In other words, such people could see the Prophet's physical body, but they could not see his real essence. And for us Ismailis, for us, Deedar is the occasion when we want to experience the essence of the Imam. Just as Pir Sadruddin in that Bandagi Ginan, which we recite at the beginning of Bandgi in every majlis and during Paroliye, Pir Sadruddin says, "Eji Pir Sadruddin bolya, tame sahib jaan jo hazur, a amar padavi to mile, jo antar bhetiye noor." So, yes, the Imam is present, and we should always consider him present. But that elevation, that spiritual sublime place is only achieved when we absorb his noor within us, when we invite his noor into us, when our souls absorb and integrate his noor into our personality. So that means that we have to have certain attitudes when we prepare for the Didargah, for the place of Didar or the Darbar, which it will be in the context of the Golden Jubilee. For instance, in Islam, there is a concept that one should keep God's house clean, i.e. places of worship like Jamaat Khanas, mosques, etc. should be kept clean. In our esoteric tariqah, we have two meanings to this. Physically, as we know, our Jamaat Khanas are kept spotless by our Safai committee and our volunteers. But at the same time, there is another aspect, that is the spiritual cleanliness. And this spiritual cleanliness is not to do with the place, the space, it is to do with those who enter that space. It is to do with the moments, that the moments should keep themselves spiritually pure by not indulging in any worldly talk, by not thinking negative thoughts, by not harboring distractions and anything which takes your focus away from the Deedar. So that is essential, that if all the moments who are in the Didargah, in the Badramni hall, if they all make a commitment to be spiritually pure, they do not gossip or indulge in any worldly material discussions, then spiritually the environment will be very charged. Each moment there has to also make sure that their hearts are not stone-like, that there is no hardness in their hearts. They have to do enough giryavzari and supplication to melt their hearts. Because, as we know from nature, if the ground is hard and if the spring shower comes, which is so beneficial, but the hard ground cannot absorb the blessing of that shower. In the same way, if our hearts are hard and they are very closed, then when the Imam showers us with his noor, with his blessings, we will not be able to absorb those nurani showers. We should continue our zikr and our giryavzari throughout the intizari, the anticipation program, and whilst we are waiting for the arrival of the Imam. We should turn inwards, as Pir Sadruddin says, that we have to actually see this Noor within ourselves, Antara Beti Noor. And we should also feel that we are surrounded by our spiritual family, that all the Ismailis who are there would all have the same longing and yearning, and they will have come with their hopes and prayers, and collectively we are the Nafs-e Wahida, we are the single soul, and we have all come to behold our spiritual father and mother. When we are all on this same wavelength, then the Deedar Gah will have that positive charged environment which will be very enabling for us to receive powerful Deedar. And we have also got to make sure that we prepare ourselves to listen to every word of the Imam's Farman, because the Imam's Farman is Noor, and his words are going to be very important for us and for our future generations. So we have to listen, not just hear, but to listen very carefully to the Imam's words and the way he expresses them and where he puts the emphasis. And having listened to that farman, we have to internalize those farmans. We have to pray for a complete spiritual reawakening, and then also make a commitment that from the day of the Zahiri Nurani Deedar onwards, we will continue on that path to attain higher and higher spiritual elevation, so that we can also have Batini Nurani Deedar in our physical lives. I want to finish by a verse from the Ginan of Mira Sayyid Khan, in which he says, Eji Deedari hove so aisa chahave, sahib ji ko chhod kar aur ko na diyave. Deedari hoye so dil bandhe, nita nita ad ka neh dare. Ek man hokar naam leve, piyu ka darshan so kare ji. These are so touching, these words. So let's take them sentence by sentence. Deedari hove so aisa chahave. A person who receives this Deedar should be such, Sahib ji ko chhod kar aur ko na diyave. He or she should be such a mu'min that for them the Imam is everything. He is wa kulla shay'in aswaynahu fi imami mubin. They should not look to any other for any guidance, for any knowledge. Their complete and absolute and total focus should be the Imam and the Imam's Noor and the Imam's knowledge. Deedari hoye so dil bandhe. The Deedari, the one who has had Deedar, should bind his heart to the Imam's Noor, and nita nita adka neh dare. And as the days pass, this relationship should become, the relationship of love should become stronger and stronger. Ek man hokar naam leve. He or she should, with total and absolute concentration, take the name of the Imam with single-mindedness and total concentration. Piyu ka darshan so kareji. This is how the beloved's Deedar, the beloved's beatific vision, is achieved. And I think this verse really summarizes for us the way we should be during the Deedar. The story of Sayyidina al-Mu'ayyid Shirazi tells us that we should pray that we too are overwhelmed by the awe and presence and the Nuraniyat of the Imam. The story of Khaja demonstrates that we should not be like those people who were more interested in the physical nature of the Imam, and taking the advice of our peers and Sayyids, we should turn to the true essence of the Imam, to his nur, to his guidance, and in this way, inshallah, we will be blessed with a Deedar we shall never forget, a Deedar which will encourage us to make greater progress spiritually and intellectually during our lifetimes on this earth, and that when we finally leave these bodies, that our souls will merge in the light of the Imam and be blessed with Nurani Deedar forever. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Let us recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.